Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Tuesday Training. Man, I hope you are having a fantastic week as we're kicking off on day two. Right, Tuesday is day two for Tuesday. Let's go. But super excited, man. Weather's here is beautiful in Austin. It's absolutely gorgeous. Very, very happy to see that. And just ready for a super busy week here, man. And we have a great show for you. I'm pumped to finally get one of my best friends on the show. Rebecca Davis is going to be joining us here in just a little bit to chat with you guys about something that I think super important in this business. And it's what a lot of agents don't understand when they get into the business, into the insurance business. I certainly didn't when I was very first recruited. I didn't understand that this was truly a business opportunity to grow your own business and build your own business. I just came in originally and it's like, hey, cool, get an insurance license, sell some insurance, make some money, right? And it wasn't until I found a real mentor that kind of opened up the curtain, so to speak, and taught me that. And we're going to dive into that and then some. Yesterday, I had a great chance to go and spend some time with my buddies over at Precision Senior Marketing as they threw and hosted the PSM Agent Summit, or the PSM Brokerage Agent Summit. Very nice little event. They threw kind of a mini half-day event here in Austin. They brought everybody in for about an hour of networking, fed them lunch, gave them some value, and then talked about the PSM value proposition for independent agents and brokers that are interested possibly in working with them. Their goal primarily is to, build up their presence a little more in the local area, right? As a national FMO, they're coast to coast like butter and toast. They got about 30,000 agents in their database under contract at some level, but their presence in the Austin market isn't so big. So they want to change that. And they threw an excellent event yesterday. I was super happy to see them do it, put themselves out there and be a part of it, go out and support them. And while I was there, I was talking to a wonderful lady here in the Austin area that's a Medicare broker, been doing it a while. Said she's got close to 1,000 agents in her book. And she mentioned that she was struggling with keeping up with them. She's got a CRM where she can put all of her stuff in. She's like, but the carriers, their reporting is so poor that I can't find out that I'm losing business until 2 or 3 months after it happens, when I finally get a chargeback. And I mentioned, oh, are you familiar with this wonderful little tool called MetaZeus? Because if you are, you can take your book of business and upload it through a simple CSV file, run the query, and it will tell you in pretty close to real time which of your members are getting flipped during the open enrollment period right now. When you put in their Medicare number and their date of birth, which is the only two pieces of information you need, you will get their current plan that they're enrolled in, the plan that they're getting flipped to, and the effective date. You'll also even find out what their LIS levels are. So super useful tool. I'm using it in my business. I highly recommend you guys use it. They are the sponsor of the show that makes this show possible for you guys and helps it out. So if you're interested in checking out MetaZeus, man, if you are a Medicare Advantage agent, or you're writing drug plans out there and you want to know quicker when your business is getting moved or flipped, MetaZeus is the way, man, because the only other way to find out is wait until you get a chargeback, which again, usually takes 2, even 3 months before you realize that. So awesome tool. We used it during AEP this last season and actually saved 7 apps, right? Kept that $2,100 and change in-house, paid for the MetaZeus platform itself pretty quick. So great tool. I highly recommend it. And with that said, I want to jump in. I do have a wee bit of news for you guys that I want to run through. Not too much because I don't want to leave my friend hanging. But I do have some stuff that I caught today that I thought was pretty darn interesting. So we're going to kick it off right now, right up there with, you guys know I like to lead off with fraud. And right from Kaiser Family Foundation and their health news platform, it says that a whistleblower accuses Aledade, I believe I'm pronouncing that correct, and Aledade is the largest U.S. independent primary care network, and they're saying that, hey, Aledade's guilty of Medicare fraud. And what might they be? Well, let's check it a little closer. A Maryland firm that oversees the nation's largest independent network of primary care medical practices is facing a whistleblower lawsuit alleging it of cheating Medicare out of millions of dollars using billing software rigged to make patients appear sicker than they were. We've heard about this recently, right? Cigna just recently paid a big 8-figure lawsuit settlement for the exact same thing. United Healthcare is being investigated for it. I think Kaiser's being investigated for it. And here is a whistleblower that's coming out and saying that the largest independent primary care network, Aledade, is doing the same thing. It says that basically their billing apps and other software and guidance provided to doctors improperly boosted revenues by adding overstated medical diagnoses to patients' electronic medical records. You can cruise on down here and get a little deeper. They specifically conflated they would conflate anxiety into depression, which would boost their payments by about $3,300 per year per patient. And they also decided that patients over 65 who said they had more than one drink per day, and they now had a substance abuse issue, and that would bring in an extra $3,680 per patient. So pretty interesting. And the whistleblower, if you're curious, who is this whistleblower? Well, it's this gentleman right here, Kushwinder Singh, who is the Senior Medical Director of Risk and Wellness Products from Aledade. So he's not just, some disgruntled worker so much. He's Senior Medical Director of Risk. And he was fired, and he claims that he was fired because he was bringing this to their attention, and obviously not very happy on it. So they let him go. And then now he's pulling a big whistleblower lawsuit to him. So quite a bit of this going on in the Medicare space. I'm not going to go through the whole article for you, but obviously this is called upcoding, right? We've talked about it before where some of these networks, carriers, etc., are upcoding the diagnosis codes so they can get more money out of Medicare. It's even been stated, and I think it's in this article, that they said, hey, learn to find the gravy in the patient's chart, right? Look through that chart and see where you can find the gravy, so to speak. So, and it goes on, and this is pretty interesting. You will find more than 24 whistleblower lawsuits, some dating back more than a decade, who have accused Medicare health plans of overbilling the government. And then it again reminds us, hey, just recently Cigna paid $37 million for this. So big deal out there. I think that is definitely something they need to tighten up. And I know part of that is supposed to be, I believe some of the prior authorization stuff is to kind of prevent doctors from doing that. So, but it definitely needs to be cleaned up. Because moving on, what you don't know is that over the weekend, while you were barbecuing and enjoying and traveling or doing whatever it is you were doing, Congress passed a spending deal right over the weekend. I think they finalized it actually on Sunday, and that does include a pay bump to doctors. So we've talked about this before on the show, but there have been some different payment cuts to physicians under original Medicare, not Medicare Advantage plans, but original Medicare. And just over the weekend, a bipartisan spending bill is reversing some of those cuts, at least through December. These aren't permanent. What they're basically doing is they're staving off a larger decrease that was provided to doctors. And it's actually, you'll see it down here. Not too long ago, there was a 3.37% decrease in provider payments to under original Medicare. And that was the CMS final rule that was made. Can't remember the exact date, but I want to say it came out maybe August of last year, something to that effect. But that was under the CMS final rule for the Medicare physician payment service. They decreased it by 3.37. So there's been some reversals to try to offset that. And what they've done in this new thing that they passed over the weekend was they reversed a 1.68% bump. So from now to the end of December, the end of this year, they reversed that 3.37% increase or decrease with a 1.68% bump to help doctors make a little more money, right? There's a few other things that were in that spending bill related to healthcare. I didn't notice that they snuck anything in weird, but there was definitely some healthcare stuff there. Let me locate them again here real quick. Give me just a minute. Oh, here we go. $270 million in annual funding for community health centers. They actually backdated some of that, but that is pretty large there. And there is also some extra money for National Health Service Corps, Teacher Health Center graduates, and big increase in funding for special diabetes programs. So pretty big healthcare spending bill that they passed right over the weekend, and that is going to give doctors back some money as well as some other programs. So one note that I thought was interesting that this gentleman left here was in a statement by the Senate Finance Committee right down here at the bottom, says in a statement by Senate Finance Committee Chair Ron Wyden, Democrat out of Oregon, he acknowledged that the funding package provides essential healthcare programs and providers with certainty for the rest of this year, but said he was extremely disappointed that it leaves behind major reforms around Medicaid prescription drug costs, mental health care expansions, pharmacy benefit managers, shadowy tactics, whatever those might be. That's certainly a broad term. And then Medicare Advantage plans with inaccurate provider directories or ghost networks. And this is obviously a big issue. One of my friends right now, Emily Trevino, is working with someone in Florida who's having trouble with apparently a ghost network deal with Blue Cross out there. So not, he's a little disappointed it included those, but it does give a few other good spendings back, including that doctor pay bump. Also, real quick, Elevance gets a $190 million pay bump this year with a star ratings revision. So basically, if you look at this article, it'll tell you that Medicare took another look at Elevance's program and decided, hey, their original ruling was not good enough, right? So we're actually going to increase your star ratings for your 2024 plans. And because of that, they get a lot more money. So they're getting $190 million bucks. Hopefully they will spend that well. So you very well might see a bigger footprint for Elevance in 2025. We'll see what they do with that money. Both people declined to comment on it, but nonetheless, they are going to get a giant pay bump. And then the final thing I wanted to point out is this article here. And I'm not going to jump through the whole article, but there's a point made at the end of this article that's going to lead us into our topic for the day, and we'll bring Rebecca on. But this is an article straight from Fierce Healthcare that an analysis company called Chartis, they took a look at Medicare Advantage enrollment trends in 2024. We've already talked about a lot of this, right? I actually talked about a report that Jared Strzok put out recently where he showed some of the different enrollment numbers, who the big players were. This article confirms all of that. But there's a statement at the bottom of it that I really like. Excuse me real quick. But it says here, let me start with this paragraph and I'll just kind of highlight this. But it says that even as large numbers of people in age into Medicare, the analysts said they expect overall growth in the program to slow. Enrollment growth in MA likely peaked in 2020, according to the report. And between 2020 and 2025, for over the next year and a half or so, said they expect to see total MA growth of about 16% compared to 2022 or 22%. So it's previously been growing at 22%. So they say, hey, it's going to slow down 16%. That's not very slow growth. I mean, it's slowing down from 22 to 16, but a 16% growth rate is very sizable. And then the final thing they say here is that growth will likely drop off substantially starting in 2040. 2040. It is 2024. That means you've got 15 and a half years before you see any substantial drop off in Medicare and Medicare Advantage enrollments. So, yes, for those of you that might think with some of these CMS regulations that, hey, the sky is falling, I don't know if the Medicare world is going to be the right place and a place for me to build a business. Well, the people that are much smarter than a lot of us, right? Their job is to analyze numbers and look at the future trends and forecast. They are telling us that, hey, growth is going to continue at about a 16% rate, and you will not see substantial drop off for about another 16 years. So in the meantime, make hay while the sun shines. And with that said, that'll lead us right into our outstanding topic today that we've got, which is on building a business, not just a book, right? That should be a pretty blatant thing to understand, or an obvious thing to understand, right? We're all out there building our book of business. But what's better than building a book of business? How about you build a business that supports that book and grows and creates something special? And that is exactly what our guest has done. I had the pleasure of meeting Rebecca 2017, if I remember correctly. It might have been 2018, actually. And it was right after she stomped me on the pool table after a few drinks that we started becoming good friends. And I have really enjoyed watching her develop and grow. She was already doing big things when I met her, and now she's doing extremely massive things in the industry. If there's anybody that is definitely an expert to be able to talk about this topic of building a business, not just a book. Even though she isn't a published author as well with the book, this is the person, because what she's done with Cannonball Insurance and the brand of the Medicare Wonder Woman is nothing short of amazing. So with that said, let's get her on stage. What is happening? How are you today?
I'm great, Tony. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It is always good to see you. I prefer seeing you in person because you're so much fun to hang out with. I mean, you and I have had a lot of fun at events and different things, party buses. We've crashed weddings together.
We have.
Wedding crasher, pal. We've crashed 2 weddings in one night, and we did it successfully. So always good to see you, though. I appreciate you coming on.
We definitely like to get into shenanigans when we get together, don't we?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So I just take a real short moment. I know most of the people in our group certainly know who you are because your brand tends to precede you, but just take a quick moment and say, hey, I'm Rebecca Davis. Here's who I am.
Hey, y'all. I'm Rebecca Davis, also known as the Medicare Wonder Woman and the owner and founder of Cannonball Insurance with a K.
Excellent.
I've been in the business. We were just talking about this, 12 years now. Officially licensed 12 years. I spent the first 4 years of it at State Farm, and then went independent about 7.5, 8 years ago and opened my agency doors. We broke the 7-figure mark a year and a half ago. We are on track to break the 8-figure mark by 2026, hopefully, right in there. And, life is good. I'm blessed. I love this business. I love the people in this business. I love you, Tony and Grace and Joe. I see chiming in. Yeah, my pool basketball game is good too.
Yes.
And, I just love the business, and I love helping people and agents and growing my team and just all the things.
Awesome. Well, you're definitely one of the great examples of this business, right? Your heart, your passion for it. I appreciate you and adore you. So curious, before you went independent, right? You were captive, right? Mm-hmm. What made you decide to go independent? You're 12 years ago, so you've been independent for about 8 years. So there was a 4-year period that you were just captive out there. What made you flip?
Well, when I first went captive, I wasn't looking for an insurance job specifically. It's just something that kind of landed in my lap. I just had my son, the hours, 9 to 5, weekends off, holidays off, paid to sell something that you legally have to have. That just kind of ticked all of my boxes that I was looking for in the moment. And so I applied and got the job. But I come from a self-employed family. I grew up on a farm and ranch. My dad trained horses for a living. Some of you know that. I owned my very first business when I was 16 years old. I owned a Western wear store at 16 that I had for a decade. And then when the crash of 2008 happened, it was high-end Western wear. So did the store. And I was just tired, and I just wanted to work for the man. I didn't want to be the man. And I really thought I'd be there for a long time. And I was there for a while. I call it my college education in insurance. But after a while, that's inherent in me. I wasn't eventually going to sit still forever. And at one point, I just realized I'm just spinning my wheels at State Farm. I didn't own it. I just worked there. I was never going to be any more than what I was in that organization. They're different than our organizations. And I kept gravitating towards the health side. A lot of people don't know this, but State Farm was on the ground floor for Obamacare. We had our own hotline for government. And a lot of people don't know that. And I just kept gravitating towards the health. Well, State Farm is technically a property and casualty company, right? But I kept selling health over there. So eventually one thing led to another, and I got recruited into the Medicare business and away from State Farm. And, it doesn't matter how you get into this business or who gets you here, because we all have stories and we all grow and learn and change. But the fact is that somebody got you here, and that's really at the end of the day that all that matters. So somebody got me here. I learned along the way, developed my company, figured out who to partner with, and ultimately have exploded in this business. And I can't be happier about it.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I see it. I see the proof of it. You're one of those beautiful people that's extremely authentic, and you share a lot. So I follow you on social media, and I see you out there living your dream life, right? Doing everything that you want to do to provide for Canon. And it's just a beautiful thing. But where did you have, like when you started Cannonball, Did you have like, I'm going to build a business, not a book? Like, had you already figured out that shift? I'm guessing no, but I'm curious. And then at what point did that another big shift change where you're like, wait a second?
Well, it wasn't the mindset I'm going to build a business, not a book, but I've always been in the mindset more of the business side, like a team. Like I always want to work with a team. At the ranch, we always had a couple people working for us. I had a girl that worked for me when I was training horses. There was always like more than one person, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe it wasn't this highfalutin business, but we had a small team. And I don't like to work alone. I get bored really easily. I need somebody to talk to. So I wasn't in the business very long before I hired my first kind of assistant, and she helped with the thank you cards and answer the phones. Very, low level tasks, and ultimately just another body in the office that I could talk to and bounce ideas off of. But the idea of building what I built today, then no, never crossed my mind. I didn't even know that we could do this. Right? I mean, what we do now, what I do today, very much came from an eye-opening experience when I went to my very first insurance conference that was outside of a carrier, right? Carriers teach you how to build your book, and more importantly, how to build their book for that specific brand. They don't teach us how to hire, how to manage staff, how to grow in the markets, how to figure out marketing truly. I mean, they'll help you with a flyer. But are they really telling you how to market yourself and in the business? No, they want you to sell that carrier product, and that's all they care about. So going to my first outside a carrier insurance conference, I was in my little bubble in Stephenville, Texas. And when I went there, my eyes got real big. I'm like, whoa, there's way more to this business than what I'm doing. And I want to learn that. So I did.
Excellent. What was it that triggered you? What was that trigger moment that was like, wait a second?
I think it's something we all have trouble with, because generally anybody that's successful as a solopreneur has trouble with control and letting go. I think is a big problem, right? You need people to have a business. You can only get so far on your own pen. And you can make a really good living and have a really great life that way. But if you want to go farther than that, you can't do it without people. You got to have a team. You got to have administration. You have to have customer service. You have to have sales agents. You got to have strategic partnerships. You cannot do it without a team. You can get to 1,000 apps in your book by yourself, and maybe one little admin, answers your phones and does your thank you cards. No problem. That's about $250,000 to $300,000 worth of income a year. That's fantastic. But if you want to get to the 7-figure mark, you cannot do it on your own like that, where you have retention and you build a team. Now, could you do it in life insurance? Probably. But you have to do the exact same thing every day, 365 days a year for the rest of your life. And that's exhausting. No, thank you. I'd rather train a team that ultimately can fully function on their own, where I can go live my best life with Cannon and my husband, right? Not that I'm not on call, not that I don't have to answer questions, but ultimately, if you want to dig yourself out of the job that we built around ourselves, we have to get a team in place, and we have to have all the counterparts. Right now in my office, we have 12 people in-house. And then we're pushing almost 1,000 1099 field agents, and all across the US. We're in about 47 states. And I'm always hiring. Like we're trying to hire 2 or 3 more people right now for the internal office. And I basically have a front office and I have a back office, and I'm in the middle. And the front office runs my book. It's my sales team, my service team for my book that continue to grow my book. They're at the LOA shop. The back office helps me with all the strategic details, the functioning of the CRM, the running commissions reports, the paying out commissions to the 1099 agents, helping the marketing with the 1099 agents, helping me do the trainings with the 1099 agents, doing everything for the field force. And because I do both sides of the business, I've had to learn to navigate both sides. And it's hard to have crossover, because 1099 and in-house business is completely different.
Yes.
You train completely different, and you manage them completely different. And your customer base, they always should come first, especially if you started with a book. So I always want my customers taken care of first, which is the majority of my staff works with my clients. We are growing the back office now because our 1099 field force has gotten so big. But I handle most of the field force still personally. I answer the questions, I do the trainings, I help with the contracting, and I have people that back me up. But ultimately, I'm running the field force because I've gotten my front office organization where it can almost, not quite, almost run on its own. I have a VP of operations, I have a COO up there, I have 3 service techs, I have 3 salespeople. It's pretty much on its own. The only time I really got to step in is to break up HR fights and on really complicated cases. But otherwise, it's humming. And I love that. I'm fixing to go to Puerto Rico next month for 10 days.
Woo-hoo.
I plan on only checking my emails in the morning and at night. That's never been a thing. I've never been able to walk away like that. And I plan on doing it. And I believe I can right now, the way we're humming. And that's the difference between a business and a book. I can go on vacation and I'm still going to make money.
Yes. Your system will continue to run.
Yes. I could get COVID. I could get cancer. I'm still going to make money. I am no longer the go-to salesperson. Do I still sell? Yes. And I do that for 2 reasons. 1, I like it. Puts extra cash in my pocket. But 2, it keeps me in the trenches for my 1099 field force. So I'm never out of touch with the problems they're having. Correct. I know how to run all the systems. I know how to get in the carrier sites. I know how to run a quote. I know what doctors are taking, what like MD Anderson's taking what carriers down there because they're few and far between who they'll take. I want to stay relevant and fresh in the business, so I continue to write. I don't write on the scale like I did once, but I like to stay in the trenches and be relevant.
Excellent. Super important. And I admire you and appreciate you doing that. I remember talking to Ed Pritchett about this. Like, I don't know if you know Ed Pritchett. He's one of the biggest guys in symmetry by far. He's huge. Like, everybody's in his downline kind of thing. He's got a $30 million home in Puerto Rico, and he still writes business over the phone on final expense. Like, he's still trying to lead from the front for that same reason. Like, I got to know what everybody's doing. Like, I have to know what my team challenges are. So kudos to you for staying in check like that too. What was probably the cheat code that you've learned that you wish you had knew when you first started building your business and not just your book?
Hire faster. I mean, truly. And then learn to be okay with letting people go that don't fit. That's probably the hardest part when you're hiring, especially if you're like us, Tony. We love everybody, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can separate business from personal so easily, and I can love you personally, but if you're not a fit for my business, you're not a fit for my business. And that's been a struggle. I've had people that I've brought on that were friends first, and I gave them opportunity, and then they'd be here for a while, but then ultimately it just didn't fit anymore. And they quit, or you let them go. And then they hate you for life because like you're this horrible person now. And that is hard, right?
Yeah.
I care about people. I was still in a moment on an emergency phone call, go rescue those people in a New York minute. It wouldn't matter to me. But I take it personal because there is a difference between business and personal. A lot of people don't understand that because I have an entire team you have to mesh with, not just me. Just because we get along, that doesn't mean crap anymore. You got to get along with the other dozen people in my office or it's not going to fit. I don't care how much I like it. I don't care how big of a salesperson you are. I don't care how much you'll fight the marketplace, the government. If you can't get along with the rest of my team, we got a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. What was other than hiring, like what was the biggest challenge that you ran into, right, or learned along the way?
Well, it's always still a challenge because everybody knows I'm not the most techie person. Like I'm in the over 40 club on the downhill slide to 50. I run enough tech to be able to run my office, to post on social media, things like that. But when everything went into this back end marketing through like Go High Level, and you code it and you have all these time slots of this message is going then, and then it's going to rebuttal with this, and you got AI involved now. My head just explodes.
No lie, she had to call her husband to fix the volume knob before we started this podcast.
I mean, and you're talking to a girl that built her business on grassroots marketing,
right?
Face to face, right? And COVID hit. We couldn't do that no more. We had to go to the phones. We had to learn the tech. That has always been super challenging. I am better than most, but still not as good as many. And the new VP we have that we hired, that's one of the assets I was looking for in somebody to help me run this office, was somebody that truly understood the tech and understood all that. And he does. He's been in the business longer than I have. He's been captive. He's been individual. He's been field. He's, managed a company. He's been in the marketing trenches, which is fantastic. He's worked in every piece of our puzzle, and I was able to snag him. Nice. Life changes, things happen. He needed a new home, and I jumped. And that's what most people don't do. They don't jump. They see an opportunity. They're too busy weighing the pros and cons. And by the time they made their decision, the opportunity's gone. You got to learn to jump with your gut. If it doesn't work, it's okay. One of the things I've said, and I've said it from stage a couple of years ago, and I'm bringing it back because I still think it's relevant, is, when in doubt, change your route. You can change. You're not married to this. You can change at any time. So take the leap of faith if you think it's going to help you, because you can change it. You're not married to it.
When did you figure that out? When did you figure out that it was time to jump?
Do you remember a few years ago, Tony, a couple of years after you met me, I was going through a lot of staffing issues. Like, I already had a staff when I went to my first insurance company, a small staff, not like what I have today, but I was having problems and internal problems, trying to organize them, trying to manage them, trying not to get attached and ultimately have them walk all over you or blow up at them. And at one point, I couldn't take it anymore. That's also part of our personalities, right? We take it until we can't. And I will burn the building down with everybody in it, including myself, to just be done with it when I get to that point. Well, it was about 2020, I think it was. I did just that. I had one person left standing by the end of the day, and I had a problem. And ultimately, that's what led me to Melissa. If you know Melissa, my COO, that's what brought us together. She ultimately, she's my brother's girlfriend, and we were just at breakfast one morning, and we're talking, and I was just ranting. And she's like, "Well, I can come help." And I'm like, "Really?" She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "That'd be great." Because if you know Melissa, she's an uber high D red. For those of you who don't know what that means, it means she's a bitch and does not care about hurting people's feelings. She loves you, but it's going to roll off her back. You're not going to be able to play the poor pity party with me. So I hired her. And so it was her and one lone member of my team left. And together we rebuild. And part of how I rebuild, I educated myself. I went to every training, every conference, insurance related or not, and learned how to manage a team effectively. Learned how to put a proper business in place. We have business manuals. We have an HR attorney. We have estate attorneys. I have more attorneys than you can imagine at this point. And don't think you're going to get around that, because once you get to a certain size, just get them in line because you're going to need them. And we rebuilt. And I've learned and I've stumbled along the way, but that's okay. It's a learning process. And rebuilt. And right now I have a kind of a team of my dreams. And it's all through preservation and constantly learning. I'm still constantly learning. I'm always trying to find a new way to manage people, a new way to get marketing, because that's my job now. Mm-hmm. My job is not to write the app anymore. My job is to make sure people are walking through the doors and the phones are ringing and everybody else has the resources they need to do their job. And I love that role because I can help 100 times more people, clients, by teaching everybody else to help them than I could ever do on my own.
Yeah. How much has your business changed in how it pursues the market versus when you created your business, right? Because I know you're huge in the grassroots world, right? And that's how you grew Cannonball into what it is today, was through, I mean, you wrote a whole book on 101 grassroots efforts. Like, you are the master. Are you still conducting grassroots efforts in the same manners? Are you evolved to something at a higher level? Have you elevated grassroots to a higher level?
Yes, 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 and yes to all of it, right? I believe in grassroots. I 100% do grassroots. Every month we have grassroots events, whether it's through the senior center, it's through the chamber, we're hosting our own. We have coming up, we have a customer appreciation event where we rented out the entire theater for the release of Ghostbusters. And we're inviting all our clients and to bring a friend. I live and die by grassroots. I still do. I still think it's the number one best marketing tool out there. The next one would be social media, and not paid ads on social media. Paid ads are annoying, in my opinion, on social media. I get all y'all's ads. I see them. And half the comments are bogus. The other half are us commenting on your ad saying, hey, that's a great ad. I'm going to steal it. Well, that doesn't do you very much, right? Very good. Now, I know there's the guys and the gals out there that have truly figured out social. Victoria Cabrera is one of them. Like, she has that down, paid marketing, her whole thing. She's killing it. And kudos to those people. That's not me. Like, I'm hoping my new VP can figure some of that out because I want it for the downline, not for me. We did a report. One of the first things our VP did, he ran a report on our call log. A random Tuesday in January, he pulls the call log. We had 279 inbound calls on a random Tuesday outside of open enrollment. I did not have one piece of paid marketing out there and haven't had since like October. I ran a Hulu ad in October. And then I dropped some flyers, of course. But we continue to do the grassroots. I have billboards up, my book. I'm on podcasts. I started my own podcast. I'd love to talk about that in a minute. Started my own podcast. And ultimately, it's from referrals, word of mouth, and long-term partnerships I've made with people. Our phone rang 279 times on a random Tuesday in January on inbound calls. Does your phone ring 279 times on a random Tuesday? And if it doesn't, why not? Because that is the whole point of marketing, is to make your phone ring. That's the only point of it. From there, it's what you do with it. But you have to make the phone ring. So whatever you do, if your phone is not ringing from it, then you're not doing something the right way. You need to change your strategy. Because it's a whole lot easier for my team to sell somebody calling into this office than it is for them to call outside this office. I don't care if it is a fresh lead or a brand new mail order or brand new off of Facebook. It is 10 times harder for them to close that lead dialing out than it is for them getting a lead dialing in. You want the phone to ring. Number one strategy, make your phone ring.
Agreed. And I mean, I've been doing telesales for decades at this point. So yes, I would always agree with that statement. As a matter of fact, I remember reading it. I can't remember exactly what the statistic was. I want to say it was a Harvard research report, but as I remember, inbound traffic closes at roughly a 60% higher rate than outbound traffic. If I remember correctly, that was the stat. I might be off on that. But any sales agent out there that's ever sold any product or piece of business, outbound or inbound, you already know. If you've sold a piece of business outbound and if you sold a piece of business inbound, you already know which lead you would prefer. 100%. I remember when Grace got one of her first inbound calls and sales. She's like, I don't know. This person saw me on YouTube and just called us. And she hung up the phone. She's like, how do we get more of those? I'm like, yes, exactly. How do we get more of those?
I remember that because you guys talked about it on social media, right? Or
Yes.
somewhere. I remember that call too. I mean, she was just astonished, and I wasn't.
Right.
You and her doing everything you're supposed to be doing in this business to make your phone ring.
Yeah.
She's everywhere. I can't open up my phone and not see her. And she's
That's
coming in
the
on
goal.
her target market, right? It's all in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the type of person that doesn't scroll by. I hit the little translate button so I can keep up. I want to know what she's saying because she's killing it. She's doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, thank you. That
And
was
if her
something that
phone is
she
ringing,
understood from the beginning.
yeah.
We knew that if ultimately we wanted to be able to get off the lead purchase hamster wheel, that we were going to, and we're not fully off of it yet. I don't necessarily have to buy third-party leads. We do a lot of our own marketing through Facebook. But yeah, her organic traffic is actually really, really good. What are some of the ways that you would tell, say, a newer agent, right? Maybe someone that's got at least, they're going, they've been in the business for a year or so, they're comfortable, but they're not killing it yet, but they feel like, hey, look, I've gotten to a point where I can write 100, 150, maybe 200 apps. How do I get it going a little more? How do I get my phone to ring and to get off this lead wheel or whatever?
Well, I mean, a lot of that depends on the person, what they're currently doing, what their goals are. They're writing 100, 200 apps a year, but they've only been in business 2 years. So let's say they got 400 apps on the book. Is that enough money to live off of comfortably, or where they could pass on their leads, or do they still need that income coming in? So that's usually my first conversation with somebody. If I hand you a stack of leads, Tony, and I guarantee you'll close 90% of them, are you okay with handing it to Sarah? Or do you want to write them?
I got you.
And if you want to write them because you need the money to write them, then building a team like a 1099 team is probably not the right choice yet.
Right.
That means we got to build your book. I generally find that sweet spot in somebody's book is once they've hit that 1,000 app mark, because they can no longer run that many clients on their own anyway. So by default, they probably have an admin just because they needed a timeout from the phone, right? Well, they've already made the first step into starting a business, whether they know it or not. And then I can take somebody like that and run with them. Now, if somebody, maybe it's a 2-income household and they've learned the ropes, they got it down, and their main income maybe is coming from their spouse, and they're okay with their income, but they want to really learn to build the business or run 1099s. That's a different conversation because they're not leaning on their personal income to pay the bills, right? And as long as they have the knowledge and how to train somebody, how to answer hard questions and things like that, then we can focus on, well, do you want to run a 1099 organization? Do you want to run an internal organization? Do you want to have a hybrid like I do? Then we need to start digging in. Yeah. But ultimately, it's about the person initially with where they're at in their business and where they want to go. I have a lady from WIN, my women's group that was at the retreat, and she's coming on board with us. And she's been in the business a long time, and she's fantastic, but has no idea how to build the business side of it. And she wants that desperately. She has some personal health problems. It's hard for her to be in the field constantly. And so now we are focusing on, because she needs the cash flow too. She's got about a book of about 600, I think. So our first goal is to get her to 1,000 and get her first couple of admins to help her run that book. And then we're going to build, she wants a downline, and then we're going to build out our downline from there. Because I think the other thing about getting to a certain size book, when you start wanting to recruit or train 1099s, first you have to be able to train them. And she can, has that knowledge. But then you have to, like, why? Why you, Tony, and not Rebecca? Why Rebecca and not Sarah, right? We have to build in that why. It's something we talked about on my podcast that I dropped Saturday with Joe Foster, the founder of Reebok. Nobody needed Reebok. There was already Nike and Adidas out there. So he had to create the why they need Reebok. And it's part of what I teach future agency owners. Why you? Why are they going to pick you over me? What can you offer? And one of the first things they have to have is credibility. And if you don't have a book of a certain size, first off, you don't really have the credibility that you really know how to work the business. Even if you do, then everything's in the numbers, and they're going to be like, well, I mean, you may know how to sell, you may know how to do this, but if you're only making a couple 100,000, why would I going to go you versus I can go to someone over here that's making 8 figures in the same amount of time? And in your head, whether it's true or not, you're automatically going to assume the person over here making 8 figures is going to be able to get me there faster, which is not always the case, right? Because that person may not have the time for you. But it's the instant credibility. And I think getting to 1,000 clients is pretty dang good credibility in this business, because at that point, you got to have a team. You just can't do it anymore by yourself. And I think
absolutely
it's a really great starting point to transition from a book to a business.
How important would you say being an agency is in building a business versus just building a book?
Well, you have to have the agency. There's no way around it, or else you don't have a business, because if you die, what's going to happen? If you're a standalone agent, you don't have a business. Your commissions and your book dies with you. Where if you have your agency properly set up, the agency will keep getting paid regardless. And then you just have somebody to step into the agency role. Like in my organization, Melissa is already tagged. She's already got her licenses. She's already got several of the carrier contracts. She's tagged to just slip right in. I mean, it's built into my trust that the keys get handed over to her if something happens to me. So you can't do that as a solopreneur.
Right.
And to salvage that book is a big headache and takes months. And if you want to know how bad it is, talk to Emily. She's had to do it a couple of times with some of her people. Not that you can't salvage it, and there's some pieces you won't be able to, but ultimately, without having the agency and the proper structure, it's a nightmare. So if you have the proper structure, if you have the LLC, you have people that can step into it, you have your outline of how your business runs, you have your commissions paid to the business accounts, you have the 1099s going to the business, you run separate taxes. It is a true separate business. And that's part of building a business versus a book. That is, after you decide I'm going to build a business, that's the next step, is you got to make sure you put an actual business in place.
True. Okay. So you're just talking about established agency. What about process? Like at what point are you developing your process, and that's in that phase? What processes are you kind of looking at?
Well, you should
key bullet points, for example.
Yeah, you should be developing your processes from day one. I mean, you're going to change them a lot. I have overall, but I mean, the idea is you're trying to train more of you. If you're good at what you do and you want to help other people be good at what you do, you got to have a process to be able to train them to be like you. They're not identical to you, of course not, but you have to have a process. This is how we take an inbound call. This is how we take a lead sheet. This is where we run our quotes on. This is how we pitch. This is how we close. This is what we do with the filings. This is how we save our data. This is how we protect ourselves from cybersecurity. This is how we protect ourselves from CMS. This is where we build the scope. This is the link we send the scope out for. This is how we do our marketing. You should be developing all of this even as a solopreneur, because you have to have all this even as a solopreneur. So now it's just a matter of tweaking it for an organization versus just me. So we have like generic links versus a link that just has my name on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I teach you, like if me and you are in a marketing conversation, Tony, I know enough about Grace that, the target market's the Hispanic market. So we're going to constantly focus on that. I don't speak Spanish. That doesn't mean I can't teach Grace how to target her Spanish market, though.
Right.
I'm working with a nurse right now. I'm not a nurse, but I can still teach her how to target her primary audience, because I know how to target an audience, how to market. It doesn't matter that the market is different. I still know how to target it, go after it. And that's what you learn along the way in developing your own marketing, and what you figured out along the way. And, what works for me may not work for somebody who's super techie. But it doesn't mean I still can't teach them how to target their market. Maybe they target it through paid ads and tech and social media, but they still need to know how to go after it, how to talk to them, what to say to them, where to find them. I can teach anybody how to do that, regardless of how they're going after them. And I think as a business owner, getting the phone to ring is number one, right? And so if you can't teach people how to get the phone to ring, or you can't get your own phone to ring, how are you going to teach that?
Correct.
Now, does everybody follow the dots? No. That's the part of all of us that are business owners or solopreneurs. We're all super driven, especially if we, have a successful business, whether it's just a book or a business. And a lot of us have to learn the hard way. I know I've had to do it too. We have to learn by trial and error. I think for some of us to actually just totally understand or get it, or to relinquish, you're right, I get it now. I should have listened to you from day one. We can't help it.
No.
And I know that with my team and my people, and they'll swing back around eventually. They'll learn and they'll come back around and they'll ask more questions. And the person that's burning up your phone with questions, it doesn't matter the question. The person that's burning up the phone with the questions is going to eventually have a very successful business. I can guarantee it.
Yeah, agreed. So a couple of quick questions and we're going to wrap it up with a few items, but it's 8 years ago, right? You start Cannonball. And then, so if my math is correct, about halfway through that period, you created this persona called the Medicare Wonder Woman. What was the purpose of creating the Medicare Wonder Woman, and how has that affected your business in the latter 4 years of these 8 years?
So I was sitting at 8% Nation, and just listening to all the people and lots of motivation, 8%, which I actually really like. I can read a book and read contract law. So, sometimes the motivation gets my juices going differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
And from somebody was speaking from that stage, and as they were talking, I was unpacking my bag and I pulled out a Medicare Wonder Woman notebook. I pulled out a pen, or not a Medicare Wonder Woman. See, that's how I pulled out a Wonder Woman, a Wonder Woman pen. And the ladies that I was sitting with, they started laughing at me. But they're like, "Oh my gosh, Wonder Woman, everything." And I'm like, "Oh, you haven't seen nothing yet. I have a Wonder Woman bathing suit up in the room too." And I was not lying. I did. And then we all got to joking around, and they're like, it just kind of came up. They're like, "You should be the Medicare Wonder Woman." And I'm like, "Oh my God, yes, I should be." But then I was like, how do I make that work? And so I was just sitting there just kind of doodling. It hit me. I'm like, I know how to make that work. I'm the Medicare Wonder Woman because I take the wonder out of Medicare. So what I did with that, to answer your question, I ran with it as a personal brand. So we have the business Cannonball, but I was still growing my own personal book and growing me as a person. So I put that on as my personal brand. I'm the Medicare Wonder Woman because I take the wonder out of Medicare. And ultimately, it attracts my target market audience.
Yes.
For several reasons. Who's our target right now? The boomers. Who'd they grow up with?
Oh, they grew up watching Linda Carter play Wonder Woman, 100%.
And the comic book era in general.
Yes.
Right? So when I developed the brand, I created a Turning 65 comic book.
I remember that too. And it was very well done.
Where we're fighting Dr. Deceit and the guy who's trying to get him to not do things properly, and they get penalties. It's just fun. I'm not boring. I don't like to be boring. I got to have a little spice in my life. And the Medicare Wonder Woman gave me a chance to incorporate some fun in ultimately a very boring industry. And it resonates with our boomers because they're from the comic book generation, the Wonder Woman generation. It doesn't hurt that, Wonder Woman's big again. Right. But it was just something fun I could have. Of course, that led to me trademarking Medicare Wonder Woman, which I got done. And then I got hit with a lawsuit from DC Comics over my trademark. Yes. You don't want to know how much money I have spent in lawyers fighting DC Comics.
Wow. I did not know that bit.
I've been fighting them for the last 2 years. And ultimately, because it became because they approved my trademark. Like, They pulled stuff from years ago, even bad stuff where we're still tweaking it. And they never had a problem with it until I filed the trademark.
Huh.
And so I've been fighting with them, and that's why you'll see things. If sometimes it says Wonder Woman, sometimes it says Wonder Warrior. Sometimes I've changed their colors because I'm trying to figure out how to work around DC Comics and ultimately still hold my brand.
Sure.
So that's been a challenge. So sometimes you'll see things differently. If you ever wonder why, that's why. So you get to a certain size, guys. Then you got to worry about people like DC Comics suing you.
Yeah. I would have never guessed an insurance agent would get sued by DC Comics, but that's definitely pretty interesting. And then Justin Brock said something about like very similar to what you just said. He's like, as you grow in this business, the bigger you get, like it's a given. It's just a matter of time before someone sues you. Just wait. Like you can't get big in this industry and probably any industry without having to deal with that. So it doesn't surprise me. I just never expected it to come from DC Comics. Interesting.
Yeah.
So what's with this podcast that you now have going on? Apparently you're hosting the founder of Reebok.
So Big Journey, Small Steps is my new venture, and I'm in love with it, actually. It's not insurance related at all, Tony. It is about business building, and ultimately I'm interviewing successful business owners, celebrities, influencers. There'll be insurance people on there, of course, but how they got the steps they took to get to where they want to be. Because nobody, hung their shingle out on Monday and by Tuesday was a billionaire. It doesn't happen like that.
Sure.
I wish it would, but it doesn't. So everybody has steps to take. So my first interview, we just released the podcast Saturday on my birthday. And I wanted to do it on my birthday. And it was our first interview with Joe Foster, the founder of Reebok. And, he's a third generation shoemaker.
Right.
And it took him 21 years before he actually ever got Reebok off the ground. After 3 generations, it still took him 21 years. And then in the 21st year, it became an overnight sensation because of the aerobic shoe is actually what turned it on. And you guys need to go listen to the podcast. It's actually really interesting. And I already mentioned it once, but it's something he said, and it really sticks with me. And I'm going to say it again. Why me? People can buy from anybody in the world. I think it's so relevant to our industry specifically because we all sell the same dang thing. None of us are selling anything different. Let's be honest.
Right.
How we sell it, why we sell it, how we stack it, how we bundle it, what we do with them after client is different, but what we sell is the same thing. So why me? If a shoe company is trying to figure out why me, even though their shoe is very different from the next one, it actually is a different product, even though it's still a shoe, it's still a different product. But if it took them to figure out why me and build in the why, that's something we all need to figure out within our own businesses. Why me and not you, Tony? Why me and not Grace? Why me and not Lily that's watching? Right? We got to figure that part out, because when you figure that part out in your business, will teach you how to market, how to market yourself, how to market to the people you want. Because once you figured out the why me, and the why me is different than your why. I don't want you guys to get confused with that. My why is Canon. Everybody knows that. That's not the why me though.
Right.
So you got to figure out the why me. And once you have that down, marketing will become 100 times easier for y'all. I promise. And you will end up with the people that you really want. But anyways, he said it on the podcast, and it was like, it was a huge light bulb moment. It was fantastic comment. My podcasts are going to be kind of short and sweet. I'm trying to make them all 20 minutes or less. I like that spot, so you can listen to them in one sitting without having to come back to it, on a lunch break and a car ride, something. So they're going to be shorter and sweeter. I've also started diving off into some other businesses, Tony. A lot of real estate stuff, ATM, some other things. And right now I own an Airbnb and a rental property. They're little mobile homes that I've picked up from people that were in some jams. But anyways, they're in the same park. And one I'm Airbnb-ing out and one I'm renting. And I'm going to take them, part of the journey on the podcast is I'm going to talk about that business specifically.
Okay.
which one makes more money, which one's a bigger headache, which one's more cost effective, because they're literally almost the same exact home in the same exact park in the same exact town, and I'm doing two different things with them.
Right.
And we're going to take them, we're going to follow it for a year, and we're going to figure out which one at the end of the day is better business.
That'll be interesting. I'd like to see that. In my brain, I would think renting it might be lower profit, but less headache. Like in my brain, I would think if you had a long-term renter that's in there a year, I don't have to worry about it. All I got to do is make sure I get paid every month my rent. Whereas Airbnb, I'm like, do I have marketing in place to get it rented? Is it full? Is it not full? Like I would think that would be more of a headache, but I have zero experience in both worlds. So I'm
that's
talking
some of the
outside
stuff
my neck.
I'm going to be sprinkling throughout the podcast, kind of like a catch up on, I'm going to explain the business kind of like what I just did here. And then we're going to, talk about that through the course of the year. And I think it's really interesting, one, for anybody maybe that wants to get into the rental business or the Airbnb business that hasn't yet. Here's a really good side-by-side comparison. There's really no differences between them. Except one's an Airbnb and one's a rental. And I think it'll be fun. I think it's fitting to the show. And then ultimately, it just gives us something else to talk about that's around
Absolutely.
business.
Absolutely.
And I know everybody in the call is like, well, that's great, Beck, but what does that have to do with your business? How are you going to make your business grow?
Yeah.
You guys, I'll tell you. So the whole show is sponsored by Cannonball Insurance.
Excellent.
So there will be sponsor advertisements throughout the show and, things like that. We'll talk about it on occasion from a sponsorship level. So I will hopefully be able to get into homes and into cars of people who normally I couldn't reach. The harder market, people that aren't answering the 1-800 phone number, that aren't a dual and switching their plan every 5 minutes, kind of reaching more corporate America through the podcast. And then with sponsorship, basically subliminal messaging, cannonball, cannonball, cannonball. So if it ever strikes up that they needed some insurance, that it'll kind of pop in their head like, well, maybe we should look at that company Cannonball on that podcast.
Absolutely. Repetition works. You just got to keep putting it in their brain. Absolutely. So what's next for Cannonball? I assume you have this in a process, in a document somewhere. Like what is there an exit strategy? Is this a 200-year legacy business?
Well, I've talked before that ultimately it's up to Canon. Well, Canon's 11, will be 12 this year. There are some days I think he has interest in the business, and there are some days that I don't think he has interest in the business. Exit, of course, is always a possibility. I think it's kind of almost silly not to ultimately entertain that offer if it shows up.
Yeah.
But as of right now, I can't sit here and say, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to exit or I'm definitely going to hand it off to Canon. If you know me, then I have some pretty good physical health issues. Like yesterday in the office, I couldn't even walk. I was like walking like this everywhere. They were making fun of me. So my personal goal for Cannonball, one way or the other, I would like to be semi-retired by the time I'm 55.
When is that? Later this year?
Well, no, not that. Don't make me that old, Tony. Well, I just had my 47th birthday last Saturday. So
happy belated birthday.
Thank you. So 7-8 years. And I don't think I will ever fully retire, whether I sell the business or not. I like to be involved in business in general. It would be more of a pivot. And when I say semi-retire, I mean, I'll be able to do the work I want to do in it and not have to do the work I don't want to do it because I have a team.
Right.
That does. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You get the freedom to choose when it's your turn to work or not.
Yep. Yeah. That's where my head's at. I'm doing a bunch of real estate investing right now. Business complexes, office space, these rentals, Airbnb. That's a nice thing. Once you finally start to get your true business built up, then you can start buying other types of businesses or other ventures and start plugging them all in to where now, okay, I have my insurance income, which is my main thing, right? Your main thing is always your main thing. But then now I have rental income, I have Airbnb income, I have ATM income, I have commercial real estate income coming in. and there's some other things I got going on too. So you just have all these little dumps coming in.
Yes.
Because let's be honest, whether we want to admit it or not, we basically work for the government with what we do in the health and Medicare space.
Yeah, pretty much.
And on a sling of the gavel, our entire job could change. And so that's always something I think about. So once I got to a certain size where I could start, spreading, using the money generated here and spreading it out and getting something built up over here that still pays me. So if that swing of the gavel ever comes and I have to pivot, I don't think we'll be out of business, but we'll have to pivot, and it's a learning curve, right?
Yeah. You've learned so much, like it's going to make it an easier pivot because you already know the process involved to build a team and to market. So now it's just, this is just my new direction.
Right. But with that, I also have the safety net knowing that I have other ways to take care of my son, to take care of our household. I mean, my husband, ex-military, works for Cannonball. He's my IT guy. So if something were to happen ultimately with Cannonball from that, we lose all our income if I don't have other sideline income coming in, and which is what I'm really focused on building a lot of that right now too.
Absolutely. It's a natural progression through the cash flow quadrant. Mm-hmm. If you're familiar with that, that was Kiyosaki's second book after he wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Well, and you need the write-off.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So that's a whole nother podcast episode that we could jump in.
Oh, absolutely.
And talk about all of that.
How do we write off?
Yes. But we are a little bit over time, so I definitely want to be respectful of you. I appreciate you taking this time. How do people reach out to you? What's the best way, man? If you got an agent out there that wants to pick your brain, maybe they want to come play with Cannonball, maybe they want to know some strategies of grassroots, maybe they just don't even know where to buy the damn book. How do they get in touch with Rebecca?
I'm probably the easiest person in the world to get in touch with because all my stuff is public. I don't hide anything. So you can find me on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can buy my book on Amazon. You can follow my podcast on Spotify or Facebook or YouTube. I mean, just shoot me a DM. I actually am the one that answers my DMs. So if it's delayed, I'm just super busy and I apologize. But normally I'm pretty fast about my messaging. I'm a little crazy when it comes to emails and messages. I try to get them answered very timely. So I'm super easy to get a hold of. Please follow my podcast on Spotify or YouTube. Big Journeys, Small Steps. We have
Love the name.
I have a celebrity as my next guest. I'm not going to tell you any more than that, but I do have an official celebrity that's also big in business as my next guest. So you guys definitely want to listen. I'm not going to be teaching you insurance. It's going to be something different. And I really think you all enjoy it.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for stopping by. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you soon this year. I'm sure I'll bump into you a few times throughout the year at different events. And with that said, guys, thank you all for tuning in. We're always here on Tuesday at 9 a.m. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Tony.
Yes, ma'am.